This is Marlin Simon doing duck soup. I moved down to the Keys in 1962. I had gone to college, quit after 3.5 years and got married, and managed a landscape nursery in Haines City for 6 or 8 months. Wasn't making enough money to, at least the way I wanted to, so I moved down to the Keys, rented a house in Islamorada, and started carving tikis in front of La Jolla Motel. Roy Bucklew said, "Would you come on over here and just carve in front of here? People will stop by and look at you. It'll help me and it'll help you." I said, "Sure, I'd love to." So I did that for a period of time, and then the people that owned the Chesapeake restaurant asked me if I would come down there and carve in front of their place and rent the what is the dock house, or was the dock house. So I went down there and started carving, and actually just prior to that I had rented a building near the hardware store and worked there for a while carving, but I needed a better location, and the Sandries asked me if I'd come down and work out of the Chesapeake, which I did. And in those days, things were very quiet. I had first come down to the Keys in 1948. I remember the toll gate the toll gate being down there. My dad drove as far as that. He said, "We're not going to pay to go on further south." So we made a big U-turn there. And of course, years later, they took the toll gate out. But
where was that?
Where Toll Gate Inn is now, by the just before you go over Channel 2 Bridge, in Lower Matacumbe. Yeah, it was a little booth, looked like an old telephone booth in the middle of the road. They just stopped everybody and charged you whatever it took to get down. But in the 60s, back to the 60s, it was very quiet in those days, and I carved it at the Chesapeake restaurant for quite a while. They bought a bunch of my tikis there, and then Holiday Isle bought them. They had the tiki bar going over there. A bunch of my tikis were over there. And 1963 or 64, Dick Barnes asked me if I'd be interested in coming down by his place, right at Snake Creek. Just before you go over the bridge on the right-hand side, he had Venetian Shores Fishing Center. And I said, "Sure, I'd love to." And he had an old submarine that was out there in front of the building, and people would look at that thing. And that was an interesting job by itself, because the guy that built that didn't understand submarines. He put it in the water and it ended up going to the bottom, and they had to rescue him, pull him up. He didn't know how to blow ballast and so on, but another story there. But I would carve in front of that submarine. I had everything just off the side of the road, and I would carve, and sometimes I'd get orders, and I'd work late into the evening, and probably October, November, when we had fronts starting to come through. Back in those days, it did get cool, and I would get cool and be working, and man, I starting to set up. So I'd go out in the highway, US 1, lay down on the asphalt and lay there 8 or 10 minutes or more, just warming up. And then I'd hear a car. Yeah, he's got to be a couple miles away. Yeah, he's getting closer. Okay, I'd roll over, get on the side of the road, meow, car would go by, and I'd go back and lay down, warm up some more, and then go back to work, carving. In those days, I remember going to Miami. I used to go to Miami to get the coconut logs. And I remember coming down the stretch one night. I started, obviously, at the top of the stretch in Florida City. I never passed another car until I was in the middle of Key Largo. Not one car. I remember another night coming down the stretch, and as soon as you get past the last chance bar up there, when you get where it goes straight, In those days, we didn't have any of the overpasses or anything like that, no bridges, so you can see the entire length. And as I got in the straight, I see this pinpoint of light that looks like a star. And I'm thinking, that's strange. There shouldn't be any stars down there because that should be the highway. Pitch black, absolutely pitch black. Well, I drove for 2 or 3 minutes and this pinpoint of light is still there. I drove for another 5 minutes and the light seemed to be getting bigger and I'm going, ooh, this is getting spooky. Well, 9 miles down at 60 miles an hour, I'd been driving for 9 minutes, wow, I passed a car. But it was really a freaky kind of feeling because there was nobody else on the highway, nobody behind me, and just this pinpoint of light. He must have been coming around the last turn as I was coming around the first one, and we passed halfway, and that was the only one we saw that night. In those days, you can't believe it anymore nowadays, but there was very little traffic down here, and just a whole different world. Those were the days they were still digging Venetian shores, the canals, and we used to water ski in Snake Creek, wide open up and down the creek. Those were the days the airplanes would fly in there, and there was one guy had a house right there where the Coast Guard station is now, or right next to it. He'd fly his airplanes in and go up his ramp. Whole different world back in those days. During that time, I'm thinking 1965, because my son was born January 15th, 1965. A.J. Mills used to bring shrimp down here. He had a shrimp truck, and he would bring it down and sell shrimp to the different people. And he knew Dick Barnes at Venetian Shores, and somebody had run over a crocodile up around the county line, and it was just laying there on the road. So he picked up the crocodile and threw it in the back of his truck, and Dick ended up getting it down there, and he put it in his freezer, and he said, we need to strip this thing out and make some crocodile skin shoes or something out of it. So the day my son came home from the hospital, which was just a few days after he was born, we had the thing hanging from the roof, from the ceiling in a house in Plantation Key Colony, and Dick and I had skinned it all out, and we had this whole big body. The croc was probably 10 or 11 foot long anyway. And we're looking at each other, and what are we going to do with this thing? Well, we put a piece of cardboard on the back of his station wagon and put this body on it. And thankfully in those days there was still not much traffic. We went to Tavernier Creek Bridge, stopped in the middle of the bridge, and threw the crocodile body overboard. Then wrapped all the skin up, and it stayed in a freezer for years. And I'm not sure what all happened with that, but we never did anything with it. But interesting stories back in those days.